The Warhammer 40K universe is home to horrors that make most sci-fi look like a children's bedtime story. Ancient gods feeding on human suffering, galaxy-eating swarms that defy biology, and entire regions of space where reality just stops working. Today I'm breaking down the most terrifying unsolved mysteries in 40K lore, starting with the one the Imperium literally tried to erase from history, the Lost Legends. The Emperor of Mankind created 20 Space Marine legions, 20 Primarchs, 20 genetically perfect superhuman generals designed to conquer the galaxy. And then, at some point during the Great Crusade, 2 of them were erased so completely that the Imperium started counting to 18 and pretending that was normal. A galactic empire spanning a million worlds looked at its own history and said, actually, we only ever had 18 legions. Like a kid crossing names out of a yearbook and hoping nobody notices. Except noticing gets you killed. Every record was purged, every genetic archive, every battle honor, every scrap of documentation referencing the 2nd and 11th legions was systematically annihilated. We're not talking about classification, we're talking about the complete erasure of the concept that these legions ever existed. Even the surviving Primarchs refused to speak of their lost brothers, not out of forgetfulness, out of something closer to shame or fear or both. So what did they do? Nobody knows. The theories range from a rebellion that predated Horus by decades to some catastrophic genetic flaw to the possibility that these Primarchs did something so unforgivable that even the Emperor's own sons agreed the erasure was justified. Here's the kicker. Games Workshop has kept this deliberately unresolved since the earliest days of the setting. That's not lazy writing. That's a conscious decision to make the absence of information the scariest part. But if a cover-up this thoroughly unsettles you, wait until you hear about the war that nearly ended humanity before the heresy even started. The Rangdan Genocides. The Imperium has erased a lot of things from its history. We just talked about 2 entire legions getting memory hold, but the Rangdan Genocides are different because this time the Imperium didn't erase its own people. It erased an entire enemy civilization so thoroughly that we barely know they existed. Here's what we do know. During the early Great Crusade, sometime around the early 800s of M30, Imperial forces encountered a Xenos species called the Rangdan on the galactic north. And whatever the Rangdan were, they nearly ended humanity's expansion before it even got started. This wasn't a border skirmish. This was an extinction-level war that required combined Space Marine Legion forces just to survive. And even then, casualties were so catastrophic that multiple legions were left severely depleted. Entire expeditionary fleets wiped out. Gene seed reserves drained. The superhuman armies that were steamrolling the galaxy got stopped cold. But here's where it gets really unsettling. The Emperor didn't want the Rangdan contained. He didn't want them subordinated or studied or locked away somewhere useful. He wanted them gone. Every last one. Every record, every trace. Complete annihilation of the species, and then complete annihilation of the information about the species. Think about that for a second. The Imperium fights orcs, Eldar, and countless other Xenos threats every single day without bothering to scrub their names from the archives. But the Rangdan, knowing about them was apparently dangerous enough to warrant a full purge. Whatever they were, parasitic nightmares with living weapons, creatures that could subvert and control other species, things potentially tied to something far older, the Rangdan weren't just physically threatening, they were informationally dangerous. Their very existence was a contagion, and nobody knows what that means, which is exactly the point. But if a species the Imperium successfully destroyed keeps you up at night, wait until you hear about the places in this galaxy where the Imperium is too afraid to even look. The Terminus Decree. Somewhere in the vaults of the Grey Knights, there's a sealed document that essentially says open this when literally everything else has failed, which is, not ideal for a species that supposedly conquered the stars. The Terminus Decree is one of the most chilling pieces of 40K lore because of how little anyone knows about it. It's a secret edict kept in a sealed casket on Titan, the fortress monastery of the Grey Knights. Only the Supreme Grand Master of the chapter even knows it exists, and the instructions are simple. Open it only when all hope is lost. When the Imperium is truly, finally, irreversibly done. Here's where it gets dark. Nobody knows what's actually inside. Not the Inquisition, not the High Lords of Terra, not the other Grey Knights. The decree was sealed by the first Supreme Grand Master, and some believe its origins trace back to the Emperor himself. Every Supreme Grand Master has carried the burden of knowing the casket exists without knowing what it contains. Hey, what's in the box? Don't know. Can't open it. Unless everything dies, in which case, go nuts, I guess. Think about what that implies. The Imperium, a civilization that throws billions of soldiers into meat grinders against chaos gods and galaxy-eating bugs, has a contingency plan that only activates when all of that fails. Not send the guard, not deploy the Astartes. Just if every single one of those options is exhausted, crack the seal. That's the Imperium admitting there's a level of defeat they've actually planned for. Whatever the Terminus Decree contains, whether it's a weapon, a ritual, a final order, or something else entirely, the ruling powers decided it's the absolute last resort. And the truly paranoid question, the one that keeps fans theorizing endlessly, is whether the decree contains genuine salvation or just a more dignified way to die. Either answer is terrifying, but at least the Terminus Decree keeps its horrors locked behind a sealed casket. The King in Yellow. Most things in 40K will kill you with claws, bullets, or overwhelming psychic force. The King in Yellow kills you with a story. That's not a metaphor. There exists within Imperial records references to a forbidden play. A text so fundamentally incompatible with human consciousness that reading it, truly understanding it, destroys your mind. Instantly. No saving throw, no slow corruption, no dramatic last stand. You read the words, you comprehend the truth, and your brain simply stops working. Which is, not ideal for a book club. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Several Imperial worlds have been quarantined after King in Yellow incidents. Not invaded, not corrupted by chaos. Quarantined because the wrong piece of information spread through the population like a plague. The Inquisition, specifically the Ordo Hereticus, has standing orders to purge any records even tangentially related to it. Not classify, not restrict access. Purge entirely. Think about that for a second. This is a universe where humanity routinely fights literal demons, and the official institutional response to the King in Yellow is burn every copy and kill anyone who read it. The threat isn't a creature. It isn't an army. It's a concept, a piece of knowledge that weaponizes itself against anyone who encounters it. Mimetic horror in its purest form. Games Workshop pulled this directly from Robert W. Chambers' fiction, the same well of cosmic horror that later influenced Lovecraft himself, and honestly, fits 40K perfectly. The Imperium burns books, censors information, and executes scholars not because it's cartoonishly evil, but because in this universe, some truths are literally lethal. The censorship is the immune response. The Imperium has a lot of enemies it can point a gun at, but the enemies it can't shoot, those are the ones that keep the Inquisition up at night. And speaking of things lurking where no gun can reach them, let's talk about what the Dark Eldar are hiding beneath their own city, the Halo Stars. The scariest thing in 40K isn't always a demon or a Xenos predator. Sometimes it's a map. The Halo Stars sit at the outer edges of the galaxy, a region of ancient, dying stars populated by feral human worlds and scattered xenospecies. On paper, it sounds unremarkable. Just another backorder the Imperium hasn't gotten around to conquering yet. But here's where it gets complicated. That some of those feral human worlds have technology they shouldn't have. We're not talking sharpened sticks and campfires. We're talking advanced constructs, architectural remnants, and functional systems that predate the Great Crusade by such a staggering margin that Imperial scholars initially classified them as Xenos in origin. They're not Xenos, they're human, which means humanity once spread further than the Emperor's galaxy-spanning crusade ever reached. Let that sink in for a second. The Great Crusade, the single largest military and colonial expansion in human history, didn't even find the edges of what came before it. Something built all of this, and something destroyed it so completely that the Imperium couldn't even recognize the ruins as its own species' handiwork. It gets worse. Every Imperial attempt to properly map and systematize the Halo Stars has failed. Astropathic readings come back unreliable, contradictory, sometimes flat out wrong. Navigation data that should be straightforward turns into nonsense. This isn't random interference. Random interference doesn't selectively corrupt every single survey mission across thousands of years. Something is actively scrambling the readings. Something doesn't want the region cataloged. So you've got a lost human civilization older than the Imperium's own mythology, technology so advanced it gets mistaken for alien work, and an invisible force making sure nobody pieces the full picture together. The Imperium doesn't talk about the Halo Stars much, probably because the implications are genuinely worse than Winnie Monster. But if ancient ruins and scrambled star charts unsettle you, wait until you hear about the thing that wanders between stars and drives entire population insane before it even arrives. The Ghoul Stars. So chaos is terrifying. We've established that. Demons pouring through reality, gods feeding on human suffering, the whole 9 yards. But here's the thing about chaos. You can understand it. It has rules. It has gods with personalities. It wants things. You can fight it, contain it, even negotiate with it if you're desperate and stupid enough. The ghoul stars don't want anything. They don't operate on rules. They're just wrong. Located in the far galactic east, the ghoul stars are a region of dead stars and dying worlds that the Imperium has largely classified as a nightmare zone. Psychers who get anywhere near the region experience severe disturbances, visions, madness, or worse, warp travel, the thing the entire Imperium depends on to function, becomes unreliable to the point of uselessness. And the expeditions that have been sent in to figure out what's going on, swallowed, gone. Zero communication, zero wreckage, zero explanation. The few records that have actually made it back describe entities that defy biological classification entirely. Not dangerous aliens, not chaos-corrupted monsters. Things that don't fit into any known category of life. Things that shouldn't exist according to the fundamental physics of the galaxy. The Death Spectre Space Marine chapter is permanently stationed on the border of this region, and their entire purpose is making sure whatever's in there stays in there, and that's the distinction that makes the ghoul stars uniquely horrifying. Chaos is evil, sure, but it's evil within a framework humanity can at least comprehend. The ghoul stars suggest there are things in this galaxy that don't even share the same framework of existence. Not corrupted reality, not twisted reality, a completely incompatible one. Imperial records warn against venturing into the region at all. Not proceed with caution, avoid. The Imperium, the civilization that throws billions of soldiers at problem without blinking, looked at the ghoul stars and said, no thank you. We're good, which is, not ideal. But if an entire region of wrong space sounds bad, wait until you hear about the star that appears out of nowhere, drives entire populations insane, and then vanishes like it was never there. The Tyrant Star. The Imperium of Man has fought gods, devoured entire civilizations, and held the line against horrors that would break most species in a week. But there's something out there that the Imperium can't fight, can't predict, and can't even classify. They just call it the Tyrant Star, and honestly, that name is generous, because calling it a star implies that they know what it is. They don't. The Tyrant Star, also known as Comus, is a wandering celestial anomaly that appears and disappears without warning, obeying zero known physical laws. It doesn't orbit anything. It doesn't follow gravitational patterns. It just shows up wherever it wants, whenever it wants, like a cosmic predator on a schedule, only it understands. Imperial scholars in the Calixis sector have tried to classify it, and the best they've managed is it's a black star, but also not really a star, which is, not ideal. Here's where it gets genuinely terrifying. When the Tyrant Star manifests near a system, reality itself begins to destabilize. The sky darkens with an unnatural black sun. Physics stops cooperating. Warp activity surges, psychic disturbances spike across entire subsectors, and widespread panic and violence erupt on nearby Imperial worlds, as if something about its presence rings a dinner bell across the void. But the physical destruction isn't even the worst part. Psychers and astropaths report overwhelming sensations of dread and madness when the Tyrant Star draws near. Entire planetary populations experience mass hysteria, paranoia, and violent outbreaks before the thing is even fully visible. Let that sink in. People lose their minds before they can even understand what's happening. That's not a celestial body. That's not a phenomenon. Something that announces itself by corroding sanity before it's even fully present is a predator wearing a star as a disguise. And then it leaves. No explanation, no pattern anyone can decode. It just vanishes back into whatever fold of reality it crawled out of. And the Inquisition's Tyrantine cabal is left standing in the wreckage trying to figure out when it's coming back. The answer, as always, is they have no idea. But if you think an invisible predator star is unsettling, wait until you hear about what the Dark Eldar are hiding underneath their own city. Deep wells of Kamarag. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar for a second. These are beings who have elevated suffering into a literal art form. They torture souls for sustenance. They raid entire civilizations for sport. They've been perfecting cruelty for tens of thousands of years with the casual enthusiasm of someone picking up watercolors on a Sunday afternoon. Fear is their currency. Pain is their language. Nothing in the galaxy phases them. Nothing except whatever is underneath their own city. Kamarag, the Dark Eldar capital, exists in a pocket dimension within the webway, and it's massive. We're talking a city so large it contains stolen suns to light the streets, but beneath the known levels, there are deeper sections and nobody goes down there. Not willingly, not anymore. Here's the thing, the architecture in the lowest reaches predates the Dark Eldar's current occupation entirely. Whatever built those structures was around long before the Drukhari claimed Kamarag as their own. Psychic disturbances ripple outward from the depths like something down there is breathing. Slaves sent into the lower levels as scouts or sacrifices simply never come back. Zero communication. Zero remains. They just vanish. And the Dark Eldar's response to all of this? Don't look, don't go, don't ask. That's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This is a species defined by supernatural confidence. They laugh at chaos. They mock death itself because they've literally found ways around it. They are, by most measurements, the single most fearless civilization in the galaxy, and something beneath their own floors has them acting like children who heard a noise in the basement. They won't even talk about it. Whatever lurks in those depths is so far beyond the Dark Elder's comprehension of horror that beings who feed on fear have decided the only survival strategy is pretending it doesn't exist, which is, not ideal when your entire city is built on top of it. But if something beneath Kamaros can terrify the galaxy's cruelest species into silence, wait until you hear about an entity so incomprehensible that even knowing about it destroys your mind. The Outsider. So the King in Yellow breaks your mind through a story, through words on a page. Horrifying, sure, but at least it operates through something, a medium, a mechanism, a play you can choose not to read. The Outsider doesn't need any of that. The Outsider breaks you just by being known about. Let me explain why this is the single most terrifying entry on this list. The Citan are nightmares. Everybody knows that. Ancient star gods that fed on suns shattered by the Necrontyr and sharded into fragments used as weapons. They devoured entire civilizations, manipulated the Necrons into giving up their flesh, and reshaped the galaxy on a cosmic scale. But here's the thing. The other Citan, as terrifying as they are, can at least be understood. They have desires. They feed on energy. They were broken into shards that the Necrons can contain and even weaponize. There's a framework, however insane, that can be studied. The Outsider exists outside all of that, not outside the Necron dynasties, not outside the galaxy, outside reality itself. One of the few Citan that wasn't sharded by the Necrons, because the thing had already gone completely insane before they got the chance. It was tricked by the other Citan into consuming its own kind, and the act of devouring fellow star gods fractured its mind so completely that it fled to the edge of existence, which is, not ideal. It now resides in a massive Dyson sphere at the very edge of the galaxy. Its nature is barely understood. Its intentions are unknowable. The Eldar, a species whose entire civilization revolves around psychic foresight and cosmic awareness, are so terrified of the Outsider that their prophecies refuse to even address it directly. Knowledge of it is considered inherently dangerous, not metaphorically dangerous, fundamentally psychically corrosive. The kind of information that damages the mind holding it. The Eldar, people whose entire existence involves navigating cosmic horrors, consider this thing beyond comprehension. These are a species that dealt with birthing a chaos god, and they look at the Outsider with pure dread. And the galaxy's response? Avoid it entirely and hope it stays where it is, because apparently the best strategy anyone has against the Outsider is to simply pretend it doesn't exist. But even pretending has limits, especially when the galaxy keeps finding things that refuse to stay hidden. The Golden Throne's failure. Every other mystery on this list is something out there, something lurking in dead stars, hiding in forbidden zones, or swimming through the void between galaxies. This one is different. This one is sitting directly underneath the Imperial Palace on Terra, and it is breaking. The Golden Throne is the single most important piece of technology in human history. It keeps the Emperor alive. It powers the Astronomicon, the psychic lighthouse that makes warp travel possible across the entire Imperium. It holds a webway breach sealed, preventing a literal flood of demons from pouring directly into the heart of humanity's homeworld. Every ship, every supply line, every military deployment, every communication network in a galaxy-spanning civilization depends on this one machine continuing to function, and nobody knows how it works. The Golden Throne predates current Imperial understanding of technology. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the supposed masters of all things mechanical, cannot repair it. They can barely maintain it. The knowledge required to actually fix the throne was lost thousands of years ago, and the few individuals who might have understood it, like the Emperor himself or Malkador the Sigillite, are either dead or sitting on the thing in a state that's not exactly conducive to giving tutorials. Here's where the existential dread kicks in. The throne is failing, not theoretically, not eventually. It is actively, measurably degrading, and the rate of degradation is accelerating. Components burn out and get replaced with inferior substitutes. Workarounds get stacked on top of workarounds. The Mechanicus feeds 1,000 psychers a day into the machine just to keep it running. Their life force burned through like fuel in a furnace, which is, not ideal. If the throne fails completely, the Emperor dies. The Astronomicon goes dark. Warp travel becomes suicidal without its guiding light. Every fleet, every army, every world in the Imperium is suddenly isolated, and the psychic barrier holding the webway breach shut collapses, unleashing chaos directly onto Terra. That's not a bad day. That's the extinction of human civilization in a single mechanical failure. The Imperium built everything on a foundation it cannot maintain, repair, or even understand. That's not a mystery about what happened, it's a countdown to what happens next. And the worst part is, if you think a failing life support system is terrifying, wait until you hear what might happen if the Emperor actually wakes up. The Star Child. After everything we've covered, every horror lurking in dead stars and forbidden depths and erased histories, you'd think there's zero room for hope in this universe. And honestly, you'd be mostly right. But there is one prophecy that refuses to die, no matter how hard the galaxy tries to snuff it out. It's called the Star Child, and it might be the most beautiful or the most catastrophic idea in all of 40K lore. Here's the setup. Deep within the warp connected to the Emperor's shattered psyche as he sits entombed on the Golden Throne for 10,000 years, something may be forming. Not decaying, not fading, forming. Certain radical factions within the Imperium suggest that a fragment of the Emperor's soul, a pure, compassionate essence, was cast into the warp during his battle with Horus, a divine entity waiting to be born, the Star Child. Sounds like hope, right? A reborn aspect of humanity's god figure finally breaking free, pushing back the darkness. The Chaos Gods certainly treat it as a threat, because they are actively working to prevent the Star Child from ever manifesting. When your enemies are terrified of something happening, that's usually a good sign. But here's where it gets complicated. Nobody actually knows what the Star Child would be. It could be redemption incarnate. It could also be something so fundamentally powerful and alien that it makes the current Emperor look like a kind old man by comparison. If the Emperor truly dies and the Star Child emerges, there is zero guarantee it resembles anything humanity would recognize as their savior. It might reunite the species. It might also reshape the galaxy in ways that make chaos look quaint. And here's the cruelest part. Some believe the Emperor's physical death is actually required for the Star Child to fully manifest, which means the Imperium's desperate, trillion-soul effort to keep the Emperor alive, the daily sacrifice of thousands of psychers, the foundational mission of the entire human civilization, might be the one thing standing between humanity and its salvation, or it might be the only thing standing between humanity and something worse than every horror on this list combined. So they keep feeding the machine, keep the throne running, and the Star Child, whatever it is, keeps waiting, which is, not ideal. But if the Star Child represents uncertainty about what the Emperor might become, our final entry is about uncertainty on a scale that dwarfs even gods. The Tyranid origin. Every other mystery on this list has a boundary, a haunted ship, a forbidden zone, a sealed document. The Tyranids don't have a boundary. They're here right now eating everything. And nobody in the entire galaxy knows where they came from. That's not an exaggeration. There is zero fossil record for the Tyranid species. No evolutionary lineage, no homeworld, no origin point. A species that may have been consuming galaxies for millions of years has left absolutely no trace of its own development anywhere in the known universe. Every other organism in existence has ancestors, has a progression from simple to complex. The Tyranids just showed up, fully formed, with the ability to adapt to literally any environment, counter any weapon, and consume any biological material they encounter. That level of adaptability doesn't evolve, it gets designed. And here's where it gets genuinely terrifying. Ordo Xenos records suggest that the Tyranids aren't invaders in the traditional sense. They're harvesters, responding to a signal. Something inside the Milky Way drew them here, actively pulling a species capable of devouring all life directly toward the galaxy, which raises the obvious question, what sent the invitation? The leading theory is one that the Imperium really doesn't want to think about. The Tyranid hive fleets appear to be drawn towards psychic energy and biomass. The more psychers a civilization produces, the more warp disturbance it generates, the louder the dinner bell rings. And what is the single largest, most powerful psychic beacon in the entire galaxy? The Astronomicon, the Emperor's own lighthouse. The thing that makes warp navigation possible, that holds the Imperium together, keeps 10,000 years of human civilization from collapsing into darkness overnight. The Imperium's survival mechanism may be the exact thing that pulled galactic extinction toward it. And the hive mind directing these fleets, the intelligence coordinating trillions of organisms across thousands of light years, is something we barely understand. Whether it emerged from the Tyranids themselves or predates them entirely, nobody knows. What we do know is that it's ancient, patient, and hungry beyond comprehension. So humanity faces a choice with no correct answer. Turn off the Astronomicon and civilization dies in the dark. Leave it on and the Tyranids follow it home. There is no winning move. There is no secret weapon. There is no prophecy that saves everyone. Just the quiet, creeping understanding that in the 41st millennium, the worst mysteries aren't the ones without answers. They're the ones where every answer is extinction. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.